So it's been a minute since I jumped on here and did any of these videos. So welcome back to SEVENT9. For a while, I'm just going to get straight into it. For a while, I wanted to replace the stereo in my car. I don't really listen to music while I'm driving the 911. I love music, but in the 911, it's one of those purists, like the sound of the engine and all that kind of stuff. But I drove my buddy Harv's 83 for a couple of hours a few weeks ago, and he has the electric AC unit from Classic Retrofit installed, which was life-changing. So that's definitely going to be a winter project if I can save up the dollars for that. And then in that as well, he changed his stereo, and it just made me realize, like, sometimes on the longer drives, particularly with my wife, it's nice to, you know, wind up the windows and just listen to a bit of music and all that kind of stuff. Because the sound of the engine, as much as I love it, for 3 or 4 hours, perhaps sometimes for the wife, is not all she wants to listen to. Anyway, so this was what was installed before. This is a Pioneer. It didn't really fit with, I mean, it was fine. It didn't really fit with the car. The sound was terrible. The reception's horrible. That's got a lot to do with the speakers, and that's something else I'm going to do in the future. But basically, there's no way also to listen from my phone, use my Spotify playlists and all that kind of stuff. So just wanted something a little bit easier. And everyone pointed me in the direction of the Blaupunkt SQR 46DAB, which is a sort of a more period correct head unit that has Bluetooth functionality in it, and a bunch of other things. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff in here which is kind of cool, but the main things that I want it for is the Bluetooth, so that my phone can, I can just play music through my phone directly through the car. And then the other thing that I want to do is I want to have just a bit of an easier system for charging my car. So what I figured out is that the Blaupunkt has a couple of cool things. On the back, it's got a USB out. And that is the connection that I'm going to use to charge my phone. And I'm going to run that cable, you know, through the dashboard. And on all my cars, I use the quad lock. And quad lock have a wireless charging head, which I've got in my other cars, in my dailies. And it's just so super convenient. I've got a desk mount for it for when I'm working. Each of the cars I go into, it's the same thing. I'm kind of into like sport and stuff like that, and fitness and things. It's got like an armband if you're into that. Cycling, it's got a bike mount. If you ride motorcycles, there's a vibration bike mount for that. Weatherproof wireless charging. It's really cool. So I'm going to run this. It just sticks against the windshield in the corner. I'll show you it when it's all done. I'm just going to run this directly from the head unit, but the head unit's also got this other cool little feature here, which is you lift up what would look like a cassette tape for any of those old enough to remember it. And in here you've got like another hidden USB thing, which is kind of cool for my wife to plug in her phone and charge that if she needs to, or, you know, me if for some reason the quad lock stops and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of cool. And then the other thing is that the lights, you can change the color of the lights. These are small little things, but like when I've looked at radios, you know, I don't like a blue light in a classic car. My car's kind of, you know, my car's black and silver and got a touch of gold. So to have a light that is complementary to the rest of the dash, that more sort of like vintage, slightly warmer tone, that's kind of cool as well that you can do that too. So in the pack, comes all the usual stuff. I've never wired a radio before, which is why I wanted to make this video, because this is all going to be new to me. I'm not great at electrical. I've got a bunch of things to figure out, and I kind of figure if I have to figure it out and I can make a video that helps people in the future, then cool. So in the back of the radio, we have these plugs with the wires. So this I'm going to have to figure out and splice into the existing loom or the harness, sorry, from my original radio from this Pioneer situation. Of course, times change colors, and, you know, I understand that some of the labeling on these don't necessarily relate to the right colors. Don't quote me on this, we're going to go through it when I do the install, but I believe that the power cables, red and yellow, have actually swapped since the original Porsche wire harness was done. So my buddy Rob has sent me a post he has on Pelican, where he's installed a bunch of these, and he's done a really good diagram for which cable goes where and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to use his diagram. I'm going to hope that it works on my car. I'll link to the diagram down below. I'll throw up some screen grabs on here as we go through the process as well. So that needs to be done. So you've got two of these. This is basically power. This is all the functionality for the car. And then the other one, which is sort of like, greens, grays, and purple, this is for your speakers. So I'm gonna have to figure all that stuff out as well. Now, I really want some nice, neat wiring connections too. So, where did I put this? So, what I wanna use are these cool little things that I found on Amazon called Kuject. There's a bunch of different ones. Wirefy do another one. It's just this set had a lot more reviews, like 33,000 positive reviews or something like that. So I'm just like, okay, I'll go with that. So you get a bunch of different gauges, and basically, hoping that you can see this here, but this is a little tube with some solder in the middle. So I know I'm going in and out of focus here. And basically, you put wires in from either side and use a heat gun, and it's heat shrink, so it will shrink around each of the wires. It will create a completely waterproof seal, and then the solder will melt and will permanently bind the wires together. And then it creates a completely flexible connection as well, and it's all nice and in line, which is really good, because I have them around here somewhere. So this is what I was originally going to use, that was recommended to me by somebody, and these are like these two little plastic screws. You put the cable in like this, and it sort of screws, you screw the two ends together and it creates a permanent lock, which is great. And it's fine because it's behind the dash and it's gonna work perfect. But you just end up with this like kink in the cable, which once it's all zip tied together, you get this kind of like knot, and it's just a little bit unclean. So I wanna make this harness the right way. I want it to be nice and tidy. Once it's all done, we're gonna wrap it with some hockey tape and do it that way. So I'm going to use these because before I start soldering stuff together and make a permanent bond, I want to make sure it all works, right? So I'm going to use these first to create the harness, put it all together, make sure it works, and if it all works the way that we need it to, then I'm going to move over and replace it all with the solder, these Kuject wire connectors, and we'll have a nice, neat harness. This is the first phase of a slightly bigger project, which is that I also want to replace the front speakers, because the speakers I have in the car are crappy, and the engine's loud, and I just want a better volume back there. And then the other thing that I'm going to throw in as well is, and this was inspired again from driving my buddy Harv's car, I'm going to throw a sub under the seat as well. So I'm not the best person when it comes to audio and all those sorts of things, but he is a bit of an audiophile and has recommended a certain sub to me and says that it should work well, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to sort of do this video in 3 phases, and that way you can just sort of like pick the bits that you want to listen to if any of it's helpful. So this video is going to be about installing the head unit and only the head unit. And I will do a second video after that for replacing the speakers in the door panels, the front speakers. I'm going to keep the rears because they've been replaced with Blaupunkts at some point, and there's no reason to replace those right now. And then the third video is going to be installing the sub. So taking out the driver's seat, installing the sub underneath there, doing all the wiring for that. And fingers crossed, bit by bit, we're going to get to where we want to be. Yeah, so let's get cracking on the head unit install. All right, so we're back in the car. So you can see I've taken out the radio and the original bracket here. You don't need to know how that's all done, just pull it all out. But basically, just coming under the car here, this is the original harness. I say the original harness, this is the harness that was created by whoever installed the Pioneer radio. So we've got basically this harness, and this is the connection to the antenna. And you can see it's kind of a bit messed down here, so I want to do this much neater. But this looks to be the original harness here from the car. And then everything else seems to be spliced in. We've got like, I think, a inline fuse here, and a couple of they seem to have done a decent connection situation down here. So we're gonna have to strip all this back and get through it. I'm not necessarily gonna film me undoing all of this, but basically you would strip this right the way back to the Porsche harness. And then of course that's gonna be where we start to install our harness for our Blaupunkt radio. So we'll see what kind of mess this throws up. Hopefully it doesn't bring up too many problems. But I'm going to start getting all of this out, and then I'll touch base with you guys once once this has all been dealt with. All right, so like everything that happens as soon as you start going into something like this is, you know, you just find just random stuff that just doesn't make any sense. You know, I've got cables that are cut that don't go anywhere. I'm not worried about this one too much because it just comes from the original harness for that old head unit that we've taken out. So just probably not needed for anything, but I've got splices going into different colored cables up here. I've got to figure out what all this is. You know, this was just cut and random, and I don't know what this is. This is feeding into the back, into some kind of harness up here that disappears into the depths of the car. So I just need to take a bit of a breather and like just try and really, really slow down and really figure out what I'm taking out and what all of this is for. I have a feeling that some of it might be for an old alarm system. That I think there was an alarm in the car before, which has been removed since. I didn't touch it, but I think it's been removed. So we've got to just try and figure all this stuff out and make sure that I'm doing it properly, because it's a little bit confusing. All right, so what I've been able to do is trace the front speaker cables and the rear speaker cables. So that's the first part of this. And I mean, to many of you, this might be really obvious, but to me, you know, I don't know all these colors, and I've got red and green wires going into blue and gray wires and all this kind of stuff. So I just wanted to be absolutely sure of where I'm at. So I've just labeled over here, I've labeled on the original harness, like where things are going. So we've got that bit sorted out here. And then the rest of this is to do with, you know, continuous power, ignition power, illumination, the remote aerial. I don't even know what my situation is here with my aerials power or anything like that, but I wouldn't be using it anyway. And then some other bits and pieces. There's a lot of splicing and stuff going on here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working my way back, and I'm going to eliminate the wiring for the speakers so that we know, because these are labeled and we know what's going on here, right? So I'm going to eliminate all of this and then just bit by bit work backwards. So we're going to take all these out, and then what I should be left with here from the original harness is these, the power and continuous power, ignition power, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to just be very careful and note and label everything as I start removing these wires to figure out what's going on. Now, I know this is the one thing that's a little bit interesting. So I know that this is a power cable, I believe, that goes to the battery. And then here, where we've got a whole bunch of cables that are like spliced in here with electrical tape. So this is awful, and I'm going to do this properly. But we come back down here, and this goes into this connector. And I've got a white cable that goes nowhere. I've got a black cable that goes into a broken red situation here. And the only cable that seems to be connected is the red power cable. So I need to do a little bit of asking around or try and read some books or whatever and try to figure out what the hell this harness is, because I don't want to mess this up. I have a feeling it's something to do with the old alarm system, but I really don't know. I'm kind of guessing here. So I want to be very sure about that. I think I can still splice the radio in and get it all working, but I just don't like not knowing what this stuff is. And I don't like having random cables hanging down here. If they're not serving a purpose, you know, I should remove them and cap them and keep them safe. But at the same time, I also don't want to be cutting things out that might be necessary. So a bit of investigative work still left to do, but I think we're making progress. Okay, so come back to the bench just quickly, because I've taken the old harness out. This is all out now. And the new harness is a little short to reach the original wiring in the 911. So because I wanted to remove everything that had been put in by the PO. I didn't want to start splicing into spliced wires and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to really take it right back and do it all nice and clean. So I don't have, I mean, I have some speaker wire, but it would be really nice to have the correct colors so that it's just kind of seamless until it splices into the original Porsche wiring. So kind of cool that the last person that put this Pioneer stereo in did use the correct color cables, even though they don't match the actual wiring harness. They do match the new wiring harness. So I'm going to take them off the old harness, basically splice them into the new one. That's going to give me a little bit more room so that when I take the stereo in and out, I mean, once it's in, it should stay in, but just want to make sure I've got enough room to work and that things aren't too much under tension and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to start stripping this, and then I'm going to use these new Kuject solder seal wire connectors to create an extended harness with the correct colored wires. It's the first time I've used these little heat gun solder connectors. So I don't want to mess around with it on the harness just yet. So I'm just going to do like a little test run. But basically, you take your wire and you thread it through the heat connector. And then we twist these new wires together, so the two wires that we want to connect. And then we bring our heat connector back through so that those two little red marks are meant to cap around the plastic part of the wire. And the solder is right across the metal connection. It's done a really nice job. So the solder is melted 360 right around that cable. I'm not sure if you can see this, but it's done a really, really nice job. And then this is nice and tight across the cable completely. So it's going to give it a nice waterproof connection. And then the cool thing is that it's completely malleable. So we can really make a nice tidy loom or harness here. And yeah, it's hidden, but it's nice to do things properly. So I think this is going to work really well. So I feel a little bit more confident about splicing these wires together. So I'm going to start to crack on with that now. All right, that was really easy. This is a really, really cool system. So they're all extended now. I'm going to have tons of room, and I'm really happy because I've been able to maintain all the colors. So it's going to be really easy to trace this in the future if anybody ever needs to. And the connections are really secure. They're watertight, and it's super easy to do. So I really recommend this kit. I'll put a link down below. So I'm going to get this back into the car. And I'm not going to wire this one up just yet because this is just the speakers. I want to get power to the head first. So I'm going to go back into the car and take a look at what I need to connect where. And like I mentioned before, I'm going to use those little temporary connections to make sure that everything works. And I'll be using the temporary connections on this when I wire it up as well. And then once I've confirmed everything is like A-okay, then I'm going to come back and I'm going to replace all the temporary connectors with these guys so that again we have this like really nice neat harness, and my OCD is satisfied. All right, so we've got the new power harness spliced into the original Porsche wiring. So bear with me while I run through this. Here we've got some cables that I'm not using. I've got an auto antenna. We've got the orange cable, which is a dimmer, sort of like an auto illumination dimmer thing for the radio console, which we don't need to use. And then I've got a radio mute cable here, which again, we don't need to use. So the wires of note are the red power cable actually comes across and taps into the yellow. Now this is according to my pal Rob, who has done this great wiring diagram, and I'm going to link to it down below. So Rob, you better be right, buddy. Okay, the yellow, this is our permanent 12 volt. So this is going into this 12 volt situation over here. Now this was a bit weird on my car. It's spliced at this strange point. If you remember from a previous video, it was wrapped up in tape and it had 3 cables. I've got this one running over to this weird plug situation, which we're not too sure where this loops to. Now what Rob again is really good at this stuff. So he is telling me these may potentially be for the antenna. So I'm going to chat with him and see what's going on there. But again, I'm leaving them out of the equation for now. So what I want to do next is I have not spliced in the speaker cables. I just want to see if the radio is going to fire up. So I'm going to plug the head unit in here. We're going to see, I'm going to turn the battery on and we're going to see what happens. Okay, on the back of the radio here, just to be very clear, our power unit goes into the bottom. This is connector A. It's the one at the bottom of the stereo. Connector B is at the top. This is where our speakers will connect to. Okay, not remotely cool. I just turned the battery on and something sparked. So I have no idea what the fuck happened because I wasn't back here and I'm working on my own. So that was scary. Yeah. Okay. All right, so battery's on. and I have no power to the unit, or the unit's not turning on. So, and if I turn the ignition on, you know, we've got lights, camera, action, and then nothing on the stereo. All right, so problem solved. We've got power and all the speakers work and everything's hunky-dory. So what happened was this, is I had a power cable down here, and as you know, I've done all of these splices very temporary, and I hadn't realized that when I went back and turned on the battery, my power cable came out here and made contact with the ground. So when I turned on the battery, it shorted out. Now, I reconnected everything, had no power, and what I hadn't noticed is I did a line trace back here, is the power cable comes up to here, and there's an inline fuse right here. I don't know if that's standard, I've got absolutely no idea. But right in there, if you can see it, is an inline fuse. That's a 16 amp. So I replaced that, and we have power, we have liftoff. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back through, I'm gonna replace all of the temporary connectors with the heat gun ones that we've been using here to create a nice and neat harness. And then we're gonna get the radio installed properly. Okay, so we're all soldered up now. I've got these like nice, clean, I've swapped out these temporary connectors for these nice, clean heat shrink things. So this works really well. I've got a nice, tidy harness here. The last bit was just trying to figure out this. If you remember, I wasn't too sure what this did. And again, my buddy Rob was really helpful with this stuff. So we've worked out, or he's worked out, I should give him credit. The blue cable is going to attach to the white here. And this is going to give your aerial power, so let it go up and down. The black and brown on some cars, and it looks like this may have been sprayed or something, but the black goes to ground, and the red is continuous power. So we did all that, and nothing happened on my car, and then I looked underneath the wheel arch, and there is no motor there. There's nothing there to help the aerial go up and down. Now, I'm going to leave these connected because this is correct, but I'm not worried about the aerial going up and down. I'm not actually going to use the FM station. I'm just really wanting to play music through my phone. So I'm going to finish this all up, and nice. This seems to be going quite well now that we're all on track. All right, so I've wrapped all of the lines, so we've got a nice clean harness now. I've left this cable out because this is an auto dimming cable, and apparently you can attach this to one of the lights in the displays here. You can like splice it into the line, and when the lights aren't turned on, the radio will dim. Now, I'm not sure if I want it, or even if it will work. So I'm just going to leave it out for now because I'd really like to finish this up. But leaving this out gives me the option to add that a little bit later on. So the next thing we need to do is just throw in the mount, which is going to go in here. And when this goes in, we just push it in, and then these little tabs here just get levered down, and that sort of holds it in place. And then the radio head unit will go in here, and we'll attach it in the back, and we should be all good to go. Okay, and here we are, all nicely installed. That went really well. The cage went in with a little bit of persuasion, but then once the head unit was put in, it was all fine. That went really, really well. The wiring went good, and I really like how it looks. It's much nicer. The Pioneer that was in here before, whoever put that in, it just had these little plastic bits and pieces on it, and I just like how this really suits the dash a little bit more. So yeah, all that's left to do is just turn it on and see if we're in business. Awesome. So we've got some work to do next on the speakers, but for now, the first phase of this project has gone really well. I really like this. A couple of the features on this stereo that's really nice is you can change have full control over the color of the panel here, all of the lights and the panel that are on here. It can be changed, and then it's nice always to have this little hidden USB port. There's an SD port here. It looks like a headphone port. I'm not too sure why you would use that, but nice to have the passenger be able to charge their phone, because for me, what I'm going to do is down in the back here, the radio has these little, or the head unit has these little USB out. There's a USB out and a microphone out. So I'm going to run that through the car, and I'm going to place it over here where I have a quad lock with a wireless charging head. So my phone, I like to mount my phone here because it's just out of the way and it doesn't sort of impose the lines of the car too much. And then the cool thing is you can have like Waze up or your GPS or whatever it is, and then feed the stereo with the music from your phone, and you get wireless charging at the same time. So it's going to work really well. It's just $60 for that unit. So I'll put that in. We can see how that all looks. But overall, I'm really happy. I think this looks really, really great. So I'm excited to just finish it up and move on to the next phase, which will be the speakers. Okay, that wraps it up for today. I'm very happy with how part one's gone. The head unit install went really well. I really, really like the unit. The sound quality is awesome already, and I haven't even switched out the speakers yet. So just having that head in there has changed everything. Works really well with the quad lock wireless phone charging system. So that has all been put in, and I'm really happy with how that works. It's really seamless Bluetoothing, connecting my phone. For music. I haven't quite figured out, I haven't even looked at sort of like how to make calls and all those sorts of things. I'm like so not bothered by it because I do not answer the phone when I'm driving my car. You know, voicemail, I'll pick it up another time. Part two, I think I'm going to put in the speakers in the front. Whatever is in there right now, it's not the best quality. So we're going to switch those out and improve that a little bit. That'll be a part two video, and then part three is going to be putting this brick underneath the driver's seat. I was joking with my friends because we've spent a couple of years pulling weight out of the car, sort of like doing the heater back dates and getting rid of old hoses and all this kind of stuff that just sort of like adds unnecessary weight to the vehicle. And now I'm putting in a couple of extra pounds of sub for music. I don't know. It's all fun and games at the end of the day. I think it's going to add to the driving experience, just a little longer journeys. When we want to sort of crank the tunes and all those sorts of things. Oh, and with the head unit as well, just having that extra USB port hidden away on the front, just so the wife can charge her phone if she needs to, or all that kind of stuff's really cool. So I'm very happy with how it's all gone. I hope this is helpful if like me, you haven't done this before, if it's the first time, or you're just trying to figure out the wiring and all that kind of stuff. Really cool head unit. The wiring was pretty simple once you get your head wrapped around it. I hope that it's helpful. If it is, smash that like button. I'd appreciate it. And tune in for part two. I will see you for then when we put the front speakers in. Thanks for watching.